it should say streaming live when it starts. Okay.
Yeah, I see that.
Good. Okay. Hello, everybody. Captivate, Team Captivate. I'm just setting up our tech here, making sure. Okay, yes, it is live on Facebook. So welcome, everybody. I'm Emanuela Hall, and I'm here with Nicole Catenazzi today. We are talking about how to face your fears and speak from the heart. And I just love this topic. And before we jump in, I did want to introduce everybody to Nicole. But if you are here, if you are watching, please just say hi, leave a comment, and let us know if public speaking is one of your fears, because from what I've read, it's one of the top fears for most people, which I find really interesting, and Nicole's gonna tell us more about that. So let us know if public speaking is something that makes you a little bit clammy, and anything else you want to ask us throughout our session. I'll be clicking back and forth to make sure I don't miss any comments. All right, so Nicole Catenazzi is a wellness mentor with more than 1,000 hours of training in yoga, life coaching, mindfulness, and meditation. She describes herself, I love this part, as a recovering overthinker, people pleaser, 9-to-5er who was tired of ticking boxes and trying to fit into one. So she decided to go all in on her dreams of starting a business. That was 2 years ago. And now she teaches other people how to listen from their hearts, how to listen to their heart's desires so that they can create a life they love too. And Nicole has turned this into her signature program called the Fearless Heart Method. I just love that bio. I hope you don't mind. I interpreted it in my own way.
Yeah, I know. It's actually the first time I've heard someone read the bio out loud. So it's actually great to hear it said back to me. And I'm like, oh yeah, that is pretty good.
That's me. I did that. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. I just, for those of you that don't know, Nicole and I live in the same city, but we never met face to face, and we follow each other and have been like, creeping each other's face Instagrams. And finally we were like, we should just chat, because I feel like there's a lot of overlap. As soon as I heard your Fearless Heart Method, I was like, that is such a great name, and I want to know more about that. So perhaps before we jump into our sort of 3 core topics, would you like to tell us a little more about what the Fearless Heart Method is, and what does it mean to listen to your heart's desires?
I would love to, because this is very much like the focus of my work right now, and it's born out of like you read so perfectly from my bio. I was very much someone who always thought I was doing all of the air quote right things to be happy and to enjoy life, like having a career and progressing in that career and buying a house and doing all the things that check the boxes that we're expected to check. And that actually left me pretty unfulfilled. From the outside looking in, you might think like, wow, you've got the great job and the great house and family and all of that stuff. And inside I was like, but I'm not happy. And it took a lot of courage to honor that I wasn't happy. And I think part of what the Fearless Heart Method, or I know part of what the Fearless Heart Method is to help people learn how to live bravely. And sometimes living bravely means actually listening to what we want, not living a life based on what we think we should do, based on other people's expectations, whether that's people in our family, whether that's just normal, social expectations, cultural expectations. So living from the heart is really about creating a life that's truly authentic to you in whatever way that means for you. So it's about really taking away all the shame that comes from doing what we want, because especially, and I'll speak as someone who identifies as a woman, culturally, at least in Western culture, women who know what they want are called selfish, they're called demanding, they're called divas, they're called aggressive, which is also crazy. And that's, to me, that doesn't make any sense at all. And I'd much rather spend my time here on this earth helping more women especially learn how to be brave about who they are and what they want. And oftentimes people don't really know who they are outside of things like job titles or family roles or social labels. You know, it's really common that when we have this question like, so tell me about yourself, or what do you do? The first thing we lean on is like, oh, well, this is my job or this is my role. And how can we answer that question, who am I, in a way that isn't overwhelming, in a way that doesn't cause us to be like, I don't know who I am, and to be really in alignment with that true self. And so the fearless heart is connected with the spiritual heart center, which is a place within us that is ultimately free. And that freedom is reflective of being free to be who we are and being confident about living in our truth. And so I think when we're talking about, you know, speaking from the heart and speaking in general, the more connected we are to our own truth, to our own fearless heart, the easier or more naturally that that confidence and that courage comes to be able to speak freely.
Oh my gosh. So I love all of that. All of that. So do you work mostly with women then? Would you say people who identify as women is more, I'm so interested to how that would translate, because I think men in some ways do have to live in their own sort of boxes, and perhaps maybe don't even see it.
And that's why, like,
Yeah.
I will say, like, I've worked with women, I've worked with non-binary people, I've worked with men, and I can speak most authentically from my experience as a woman, but I can absolutely say that the core of this work is applicable to anyone who has a curiosity or an innate desire to want to live a life on their terms, not based on an external expectation about what their life should look like.
And who has a heart.
Yeah, if you have a heart, you want to connect to it, this work is absolutely for you.
I love that. So, and it speaks to, you know, we're both yoga instructors, and that was when my first time coming to my mat, and I think the instructor said to me, you know, take off all the things you are from your day and just be yourself on your mat. And I'm like, well, what does that even mean? Like, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a this, I'm a that. And we just, to like unpack all that and just come to the essence of your heart and who you really are. And for you to be able to help people do that is just such amazing and important work, I think.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's really transformational when people get into it.
Yeah, and I'm assuming you use like all of your modalities kind of come into play in your coaching practice with people in this method.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the concept of a fearless heart and the qualities of the spiritual heart center are absolutely like informed by the yoga tradition, the yoga philosophy. And then the practices that we use in the program include meditation, include journaling, lots of that introspective work to start to unpack and peel back some of the layers. So it's all definitely woven into what it has become now.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. So let's go on to some of the things we told our audience we were going to talk about today.
Yeah.
So facing your fears, and like I mentioned, public speaking is one of the, if not the most common fear that people seem to have. So can you tell us a little bit, in your opinion, why you think that is, or where that comes from?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to answer that question, and this is a lot about where my work is focused, is understanding that fear is a response to wanting to protect us from something that we perceive as dangerous. And so when we really take it back from, it's not just about, oh, I'm afraid of talking to someone, it's about the vulnerability that opens up. And so fear as a protective mechanism sees that vulnerability. And, you know, if we go back way into our lizard brains, like when we were these little creatures roaming the grass, if there is a threat to our survival, the fear response will activate. And so, yes, of course, in the conversation we're having now, public speaking might not necessarily be a threat to your survival, although certainly in some cultures, speaking up about your truth can absolutely threaten your survival. But to recognize that when we have that reaction to being afraid of something, the fear is there as a protective mechanism, not as like a saboteur. So when you look at the response as like, okay, this is me having a human experience, and recognizing that at some level I'm perceiving there being a threat to my safety, how can I then tell my nervous system that it's safe to do what I'm about to do, or that it's safe to speak up? Because anytime we do quite literally anything outside of our comfort zone, so let's say we're someone who's not used to public speaking, the first time we do that as an adult, it's going to be really scary because we haven't really experienced it before. And, you know, when we're kids, and I don't have kids, so I can't, but I was a kid once upon a time, so I remember this. You know, when we're kids, we kind of don't really think about what others are thinking about us. We're sort of this carefree, wild. And then it's not until we start to interact with the world and in our communities or in society in a way that we might do something. We might speak up really loudly, and then you have an adult say, shh, don't do that. Or, you know, you raise your hand in class and the teacher says, no, that's wrong, don't say that. And then that's how we start to learn, ooh, okay, I wasn't accepted when I did that. And that's how we start to develop these habits, these responses to speaking up. And it happens unconsciously, and it happens over time. So when we get to a place in our adulthood where we say, okay, I want to be speaking up more, I want to tell my story, or I want to have more confidence when I'm speaking to a group, we have to almost rewire ourselves, our brains, to see that not as a threat to our survival, but as a way of connecting with people who will honor us and who will welcome our stories. Because really, and I'm sure you know this, that when we share our stories, that's where we build true connection. And so it's actually quite counterintuitive for us to think that we're going to tell our stories and we're going to be rejected. Yes, if these stories are different to ones that we've been telling our whole life, there might be a little bit of resistance from people in our circle. That's totally natural. But so if we can go into that situation knowing that there's going to be a change, how can we best prepare ourselves to navigate that change and to still move forward even if we're afraid?
And I think that speaks to the need, well, maybe not the need, but the privilege it would be to have a support person like you, or a coach who's almost like a guide helping you through that journey, because doing it alone can be even scarier, right? To have someone who has your back. And I know your program is also a group program. So having those, when I joined my group business coaching program, it's like, it's a whole different space. Like my close friends and those people are in a different space, but they support me in a different way, in a way that like just helps you have that cheerleader being like, you can do this, you can do this.
Yeah. And I think it's also helpful, you know, and the work that you do too, if we aren't sure how to go about doing something, we have to be willing to ask for help with that. And so often in our culture, asking help is seen as a weakness, when actually, can we embrace like, you know what, I don't know how to do this, or I'm not sure the best ways to speak publicly, or I know I'm afraid of doing this, but I don't know how to get past that fear and do it. Rather than, you know, getting all in our heads, which is really what I used to do. I would overthink everything. I could have entire conversations last for hours of me like ping-ponging in my brain about like, okay, well, if I do that, then I can't do that. But then if I do it this way, maybe this will happen. And
the overthinker.
The overthinker, yeah. And so can we get out of our own way? Can we get out of our heads just enough to look at that with some space and objectivity? And having a coach, having a group to help you do this is so helpful, because yeah, we can talk ourselves into circles. We can.
And, you know, not to go too far off topic, but you said something about asking for help, and it just rang something in my bell. So this week on the full moon, I pulled the power card from my angel deck. And in it, it said, in order to step into your power, you have to ask for support and ask for help. Well, I wasn't thinking of this. And yesterday I messaged my best friend and said, wow, this is really a busy week. Maybe I took on more than I thought I could. And without skipping a beat, she said to me, how can I help? What can I do? And I was like, oh, right. Maybe if I just asked for help. But even, and again, I think this is sometimes more common in women who we just think we can do it all. And we feel like we have to do it all or something. So that's just a little point that I love that you touched on about asking for support. Yeah, and I did also want to mention when you were talking about public speaking and that fear that could be repressed from before. I'm reading a great book called The Right to Speak, which I feel like you would love, but it's more about like just our voices and how even as children we were told, you know, depending on the generation you grew up in, you know, children should just be seen and not heard. And the actual tone of our voice and the way we use it, you know, if we speak very airy or if we speak very like high pitched or we speak low pitch or we don't speak very much, that all is something we can unpack with a coach and help us to amplify our voices so that they can have more power instead of just you know, technically speaking. A lot of that comes from trauma and just our upbringing, that perhaps even culturally things that we don't even realize have happened.
Yeah, so much of it is unconscious, and the more, if it's unconscious, then we can't do anything with it to change it. And so the more that we can inquire about, you know, why am I nervous in a public speaking situation, or why do I lose my voice after I've been talking for an hour, and look at that not as like, oh, something must be wrong with me that I can't do this, and look at it as like, what is there for me to learn from this, and can I be more expansive with how I problem solve or address the issue rather than immediately taking it on as a personal failing, which I also used to do.
I love that. And I tell everybody in this group in a lot of my lives, you know, the way to get better is just to do it, right?
Yeah.
You have to do it. It's like anything. Okay, well, let's move on a little bit here. So what does it mean? I think we already covered how to face your fear, but what does it mean then to speak from the heart? Like, how do you know when you're speaking from a place that's true to your heart? Is there any sort of like physiological things that happen, or just the way you feel? Is that?
Yeah, it depends on the person, but a couple of things that I would say to like know how to tap into that. One of the best tools that I teach and that I use in my own practice is stream of consciousness journaling, which is a way of just anything that's kind of front of mind to you, letting yourself like write it out without thinking about it. And let's say if we're thinking about this in the context of storytelling and you know, what story do you want to tell? If instead of sitting at your computer and trying to craft the exact right paragraph structure for how you tell the beginning, middle, and end of your story, if the first thing you do is just sit down and write it as if no one else was going to read it, write it without any worry about grammar or sentence structure or spelling, that message is going to be the most authentically aligned kind of truth to whatever it is that you want to share. And the reason why that practice is so helpful is it gets us out of our thinking mind, which likes structure and likes to categorize things and likes to label things as good or bad or right or wrong. And instead it's about getting into the flow state of just what is coming out naturally that you don't actually have to think about. So I talk about the fearless heart as being this place of having an innate wisdom without thought. So it's not a wisdom that you learn, it's something that you just innately know. And some of the ways to tap into that, to get into that space, is like I mentioned through stream of consciousness journaling, but overall we actually have to be in a nervous system space where we are calm and connected and restful, because our fear response is in that activated sympathetic state. And, you know, not to go too much into the details of that, but basically when we're, you know, going through our normal day-to-day life, we're in that fight or flight response. We've got stress, we've got distraction, we've got noise, we've got busyness. And the more that we can switch into our parasympathetic nervous system, our innate, our natural kind of rest and digest state in the body, the more space we have to actually tap into that intuitive connection about what is in our hearts. And so when we're talking about, you know, speaking from your heart, I think people find it challenging because there's definitely a vulnerability that comes from sharing a less filtered or a less censored version of ourselves. Which is why, again, this practice of starting with it in a journal is a nice way of just like dipping your toes into like, you know, what do I have to say? What do I have to express? And then, you know, being with whatever comes up there and starting to work with that as like your baseline, your starting point. I think of it too as like, if you were to, so when we think of public speaking, we think of like holding a mic and standing up on a stage. And then if you could just put the mic here, right? Like if you could bring the mic to your heart and just imagine your heart had a little mouth and it would just talk, what would it say?
So
and that's
good.
part of, what can come up.
Right. And I mean, we're calling it public speaking, but it could just be speaking in public, right?
Yes.
Speaking to your partner, speaking to your loved one, or even a stranger.
On Zoom, speaking on social media, speaking to a friend. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I know. I remember like even in meetings when I did work in the real world, there's always the people that don't say anything at all. And then the people that are always very vocal. So it's interesting to see how some people just, and sometimes it can go the other way where we speak and speak and speak to cover up maybe what we really want to say, what our truth really is. But maybe that'll be a topic for another day. We could go on forever. I love all this though. It's, and when you were talking about the journaling, it's almost like, because I love journaling too. It's a big practice of mine. And it's sort of like to get all the gunk out of there first.
Yes.
Like it's not until the second or third page that you're starting to feel, oh my gosh, where is this coming from? And it just starts to pour. Like I try to do morning pages whenever I can. And the first page, I'm just like, I had a good sleep. Drinking tea, don't have anything. And then as I just keep forcing myself to write, it's sort of like, then you get that out of the way. So then when you do have to go and speak, you're coming more from a place of, I don't know, honesty, because all of that judgment and head stuff is out and we can go, like you said, go a little deeper.
Yeah. It's kind of like shifting from the habit, the autopilot mode, into like the intentional mode, because all of those little things that come up early in the journal in the morning pages, and I do a similar practice with the Fearless Heart Method. We call it your inner dialogue diary. And a lot of the stuff will come up first is I don't know, is this important? I don't really have a lot to say. No one really wants to listen to me. I don't know what I want. It's a lot of the like, I don't knows. And then if you just let the process continue, eventually you will get to that place where there's a lot more clarity. But you have to get through that process, which is the same thing when we're talking about facing your fears. Like you have to get through it. You can't let the fear stop you. And it's not to say that we're never going to be afraid ever again, but it's to say we can recognize that we can actually move through and past the fear and honor it as part of the natural process of doing things that can be hard, doing things that are out of our comfort zone. And that the fear is, again, just that protective mechanism.
And sometimes that fear can just be adrenaline too, right? Like, and then once you go through it, it's almost like a rush.
Yeah.
So that kind of brings me to, we said we were going to share 3 tips on how to share your story, even if you're scared. So I'll let you go, and then I'll see if any of them are similar to what I was thinking to add to this conversation, because like we said, so many people are afraid, and everyone who's, I think, in this group wants to speak more from the heart and speak their truth. So let's give everyone a few tips they can go home with to do it, even if they're scared.
Cool. Yeah, I love it. Okay, so the first tip I'll say is to actually come up with a game plan. And so when we are needing to do something that is scary or hard for us, we are better supported when we can actually remind our bodies and our minds and our hearts that like there's safety here. And so coming up with a game plan, and that could be like, okay, I know I want to do, let's say I want to do a live on Instagram or whatever. What do I need to do to feel ready to do that live? what's likely to get in my way? So when I'm like getting real close to hitting record, what are the things that I know are going to come up to make me not want to hit record? And then who can I call for support when I'm either preparing to do that or when I'm finished? And actually part of like the process that I teach is that we need to be able to celebrate when we do hard things. So part of your game plan, let part of your game plan include like, man, once I finish doing that live,
Yeah.
how am I going to celebrate? Who am I going to call? What am I going to do? What treat am I going to offer? Like, because again, like we don't often appreciate how much work goes into doing things that are hard. And speaking from your heart is definitely hard if it's not something that comes naturally to us or not something we've intentionally tried to make a practice of. So coming up with that game plan is going to make you feel more prepared and better navigate when the habit of I can't do this, or when the thought of no one's going to like it, or any of those little blocks that are inevitably going to try and get in our way. Again, with innocence, right? Because these blocks come up because they're trying to protect us. They're trying to keep us safe and comfortable, or that perceived safety and comfort. The second tip that I will give is to, and I mentioned this earlier, is to try and get into a calm and relaxed state. And so the more that you can tap into that parasympathetic nervous system response, and I'm sure you've offered many practices through creative wellness where, can I take a few slow, deep breaths, lengthening my exhale? Maybe I need to go for a walk in nature. Maybe I want to have a nice home cooked meal. What are the things that get me into a state where I feel centered and calm? And if we can do that before we're about to speak, great. If it's part of our game plan to say after we're done speaking, what am I going to do to like release that energy and kind of down regulate? So the more that we can tap into that parasympathetic nervous system, that calm, relaxed state, the better the healing process will come to kind of recover from the effort that goes into speaking from your heart. And then the last tip that I'll give is kind of a funny one, but if you can in some way think about your message, whatever it is you want to say, as being of service to someone rather than the message being all about you. And sometimes giving yourself that space to realize like storytelling is about connection. So thinking about how will your message help someone else? How will you be able to strengthen a relationship by saying what you need to say? How will you be able to quite literally, be of service to the people who are listening to you, the people who want to hear from you, the people who you're having conversations with. So making it a little less about you, taking the pressure off of it being all about you, and looking at it from how it might actually help or support someone else. Those are my 3 tips.
I love it. And I love the last one because that was my first one.
Hey!
And we didn't even coordinate that. So can you review your 3 again? So have a game plan. I love that.
Yeah. Calm your nervous system either before or after, ideally before and after, but make sure that you have a practice that gets you into that calm, relaxed state. And then, be of service. Let your message be about connecting or offering something to someone else rather than being about you.
So the nervous system piece, if I could touch on that, it's very similar. What I tell my folks here is to warm up, like literally do your cat cows, do your deep breaths, stretch whatever you need to stretch, shake it out, do some lions, warm up your face, because not only does it help you physically, but it also gets like, again, getting that mental gunk out of there so that you can be more prepared for whatever you are going to say. So that's similar. So yeah, the first one I had was that it's not about you. Try to think of it. Of course, it's always about us, right? It's our life. We're the ones doing it. But if you think of it as a gift or as service, that you're not taking from anyone by speaking, you're giving.
Yep.
Right? It's only costing them their ears, their time, and they'll be better probably for hearing your story than they will be for not hearing it. So thinking of it that way. Number 2, I also had it could be good for your health. And this was sort of what we were talking about with the adrenaline, like good for your health also in the fact that it stretches you. So if you can focus on the fact that you're doing something, just like I don't always want to work out. Most people don't when they're starting, right? They don't want to go, but you know it's going to be good, like thinking of how this is going to stretch you, how, and that most people, I mean, I heard somewhere that Ella Fitzgerald was like painfully shy in real life, and she yet was one of the greatest jazz singers of all time. So know that it's totally like you said about the nervous system. This is human. There's nothing wrong with you. And some of the greatest speakers and artists of our time were still shy people. It's not, you don't have to be shy or extroverted. Like there's no recipe for being able to do it. Just being able to recognize it and seeing it as growth. And then also don't worry about the outcome so much. I think for me personally too, I'm often like when I wrote my play last year, I was often thinking, what are people going to think about it? You know, what is this what are people going to write about it? And I got more value from it personally when I just did the job, just showed up, did the work. Like I said, like we both said, I'm just here to do my job, be of service, offer what I have to say and give, and forget about the outcome of what is going to happen, because ultimately people might love it, people might hate it, you might lose friends, you might gain friends, but that's neither here nor there when you just there to do your job. And that comes with learning the tools that you teach about calming our nervous system, because it's that worry and fear that gets in the way of just doing our job. So I think what you are teaching people is such a skill, especially moving forward in the world right now, where many of us didn't expect to be doing live videos or just videos at all. And, you know, it's quite different. I'm sure you feel that way too, from when you're doing your live workshops and you're with people in real life. It's a bit of a different, even though you're still the speaker and you're still leading and guiding, but there's people there and that you can actually talk to, as opposed to the screen. It can be a whole different ball game. So thank you for coming on here today, Nicole. You're just a wealth of knowledge and you're just so lovely. So I would love for everyone watching today, even if you are watching the replay, to know how to get in touch with you. And tell us if there's anything coming up for you that you'd like to share with us.
Yeah, thank you so much. So again, it's been an awesome conversation, and I'm so glad that we, even though it hasn't been an in-person, in real life meeting, that we are at least, getting to know each other in virtual ways. But yeah, so people can connect with me on Facebook. So you obviously can find me in the group, send me a message at any time if you have any questions about what we covered. I am about to launch a new website, which I'm really excited about. And it just so happens that next week I'm doing a 5 days of giveaways event to celebrate that. So in that process, I'll be giving away free coaching sessions, free yoga sessions, some of my favorite books on living from the heart and on yoga and meditation. So if that might be a fun way to kind of get a little bit of a flavor for what I do, and if you want to join that, maybe I'll put the link in the comments after this video is posted, so you can join the giveaway. And then the next Fearless Heart Method program starts in January. And it's a group coaching program. We meet once a week for 6 weeks. And there's lots of really introspective work that you can do on your own time. And then we meet as a group and go through some of the challenges that come up when we think about living bravely and living from the heart. And it's especially helpful if there's something, so I'd say it's very helpful if you want to get to know who you are outside of the ways in which we often describe ourselves based on what we do or who we are in relation to other people. So if you've ever had that kind of like inner calling, like I know that there's something more for me or more that I want to know about me, this course will absolutely get you a ton of clarity and confidence in who you are. And the other thing that it's really helpful for is if you've been kind of sitting on a dream that keeps getting pushed off. And you keep saying, well, maybe next year, or well, maybe next month, or I'm not quite ready yet. And people who have come into my program have done things like, finish a book that they've been writing. People have come in to then quit their jobs and realize that their jobs really weren't serving them, and they've always wanted to do something else, so they do something else. I've had people start businesses right after the program. So if you kind of have a dream where you're like, I know this is something I want to do, I'm meant to do, but I don't know how to do it, or I keep putting it off, or I keep getting stuck. And usually the stuck happens in fear, when we start to worry about all the possible things that might happen if we actually did the things we wanted to do. Then this program is for sure for you. So that starts in January, but again, send me a message if you'd like some more information on that. And yeah, sign up to receive my newsletter and take part in the giveaway next week.
Yeah, so the giveaway, we sign up for your newsletter, and then we get all the stuff through the newsletter.
Exactly, yeah.
That's such a great idea.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. It also lined up well with the holiday season. So
yeah,
it's a cool way of celebrating a new launch, and also sharing some of
Congrats.
my favorite things. Thank you.
Congrats on the website. That's a huge, mine broke in March, and I haven't, I broke my own website. No, I tried to change my domain name. It was all worked out, actually. It was like the week before the pandemic, and it all worked out in the end, but I still don't have a new one. I'm just waiting for the right moment to get back in there.
Yeah, it is a big chunk of work, but I'm really excited to put it out there. And
congrats.
Yeah, it's really reflective of this direction. So
awesome. Well, again, thank you for coming, and
thank you for having
go out and enjoy some snow and some sun.
Yes.
We have some people in this group from living in Florida and stuff, so I just keep sending them snow pictures. Like,
yeah, I gotta
say you
go
want to
shovel.
move to Canada. Anyways, have a great afternoon, and thank you again so much.
Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Okay, bye.
Bye.